start? Good evening, everyone. My name is Jay Newell, and I'm with the Plainfield Friends Church, and I'd like to welcome you to the second event in our community series. Tonight, we're having a community conversation with the police department, and I'm going to hand it over to Deputy Chief Joe Aldrich, and he's going to introduce the rest of his group. There's too many of them for me to know, so here we go, Joe.
Good evening, how are you?
Too close to the speaker.
Yeah. Good evening, how are you? That was not good enough. That wasn't good enough. We're going to try this one more time. Good evening, how are you? Great. I appreciate all of you coming out tonight. This is the second one for us for the year as well, our community conversations with Plainfield Police Department. You can see up here, we have lots of police officers to engage with you tonight, and some of them are in uniform and some of them are not. That's by design. And then you'll see one in brown. He's going to introduce himself here in a little bit, but he's from the Henderson County Sheriff's Department. We invite them to these as well because they patrol the same area as we do in Plainfield. And so these community conversations are kind of like a coffee with a cop. Has anybody been to a coffee with a cop before? A couple? So typically we would go to a coffee shop and ask you to come to us. And sometimes people would come in and get their coffee real quick and say, "Oh, nice to see you, but I got to go to work." And they just rush out the door. And so we decided we wanted to start going to the people rather than asking them to come to us. And you guys have probably seen in the national media in the last year or year and a half how things with law enforcement have there's a lot of questions, right? There's a lot of concerns with law enforcement. And we thought, we really need to do something to engage with our public in Plainfield, in our community, so that we can have a better relationship. So this is kind of like a coffee with a cop with a little bit more, stuff to it. So I'm going to let each of these guys introduce themselves up here and give a little bit of information about what they do for the department. And then we're going to hand it over to the chief and the guy in the brown, Jack Sadler, from the Sheriff's Department to explain a little bit of what's going on with each of their agencies. Plainfield's growing, and so we have a lot more officers than we used to have. And so we have a lot of new initiatives and programs that we're doing at the police department. So I'm going to let each of them explain what it is they do after they introduce themselves, and then kind of give just a brief description of what's going on with our agencies right now. After they get done doing that, we're going to open it up to like a question and answer session. There's nothing that's off the table. Anything you're concerned about, you have a question about, anything you've just thought about, I've really wanted to ask this question and I've never had the opportunity to, bring it up tonight. After we get through all of those, we're going to have a little one-on-one session. We're going to break up. You guys can come up here and get coffee and donuts and just reach out to an officer individually and talk with them. If there's a question you have but you don't feel like you can speak up in front of everyone tonight, grab one of us and pull us aside and talk with us. So I'm going to start with Chief McKee, and we can just go down the line. If you guys would just introduce yourselves and what you do for the agency.
I'm judging my voice with the microphone. Why don't you go first, Joe, since you didn't introduce yourself and what you do exactly?
Introduce me. My name is Joe Aldrich. I'm the Deputy Chief of Support for the Plainfield Police Department. Anything that's basically not patrol or operations is in my bailiwick. So it's kind of my responsibility. My responsibility is to get all of you guys here tonight to engage with us. So that's what I do.
Thanks, Joe. And I would like to just mention some of the other people that are here that help us out every day. We have Tina Foster in the front down here. She helps us with everything, right? She's in charge of hiring and community events and scheduling and keeping all of us on track. Very, very important. Behind her is the fire chief. He's going to come talk to you later this year. So he's seeing how it's properly done with the police department so he can model that for his agency. In the back is Julie Winship. She is our accreditation manager. She manages all of our accreditation as we are an accredited agency. And then Joy Phillip is a police commissioner who is here as well, and she's part of our civilian board. So again, my name is Jared McKee. I'm the police chief. I've been the chief since August of 2018, so still fairly new in my position. I didn't grow up in Plainfield, but I graduated from Plainfield High School, so this is my community. I've been here for a long time, left for just a short period of time, because as everyone does that grows up in a community and they say, I'm never coming back, right? And then you leave and you're like, I want to come back. So came back and have been a police officer here for a little over 21 years. So love this community, love to be a part of it, and glad that we're here.
So I'm Jack Sadler. I'm a captain with the Hendricks County Sheriff's Office. I graduated from Danville Community High School, so I was able to move home and be able to do our job of law enforcement in the community where I grew up, which is absolutely amazing. We are truly blessed to be able to do that. As far as the enforcement division goes, I'm in charge of all of our uniform deputies. So anyone that you see out patrolling in uniform, whether that's a merit deputy or a reserve, those are my people. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I have about currently 48 deputies that I'm in charge of.
Hi, my name is Gary Tanner. Originally from Warsaw, Indiana, up Winona Lake. I don't know if in northern Indiana. And I was sponsored there by our local Kiwanis group to go to state police career camp. And that's where I got my little exposure to law enforcement. Ended up going into architecture, got a degree in architectural engineering, and then that was too boring for me. I decided to go to school for law enforcement. Got a degree in criminal justice from Ball State, and got a job working here at Plainfield, and I've been here ever since. So it's going on 26 years now. I've done a lot of different things, bike patrol, firearms instructor, armor. I'm also a chaplain with the police department. Done that for quite a few years. And about 9 years ago, I transitioned off the road. After 19 years on the road, of working as a patrol officer, I transitioned to handle into support branch, the same branch that Deputy Chief Aldridge is a part of. And I transitioned to be able to handle all the evidence and all the property that comes in through the property room. And so that's been what I've been working on. In addition to that, I help out with social media. I also help out with I also manage the school resource officer. So the school resource officer sergeant, I supervise him, and then he supervises all the school resource officers that are in all the elementary, middle school, and high school. So that's what I do.
My name is Kyle Pruitt. I'm Deputy Chief of Operations. So like Deputy Chief Aldridge alluded to, essentially everyone that you see in uniform on a regular basis that's not a school resource officer is one of my folks. I like to say that I work for them rather than they work for me. They do a great job for us on a daily and nightly basis. They keep us busy and the public keeps them busy, so it works well that way. I am an import to the Plainfield community. I came here in 2006 as a patrol officer. I've been there ever since, so 15 years. My wife and children love the area, so I'm kind of stuck here now. In spite of, I always tell people I'm a tropical animal, but I live in a winter climate, so she still doesn't want to move south. We're still going to be here. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of things at the department as well. I still miss the patrol side a lot because I got into law enforcement to do all the fun things and have a different day every day, and now I sit at a desk and go to meetings and work on a computer for the most part. So it's good to be out in public, but otherwise, I'm happy to be here.
I'm Zach Godosky. Everyone on this panel could probably be my dad. But I actually didn't grow up here. I grew up about an hour south of Toronto in Ontario. I moved here in 2010. I was hired by the Plainfield Police Department after college. Started as a reserve for about a year and then got hired full-time. I'm currently the sergeant of day shift, one of the day shifts. We operate with 4 shifts right now, 2 day shifts and 2 night shifts. And I am the sergeant of the day shift that'll be working tomorrow and Thursday. Yeah.
My name is Brian Bugler. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'd love to have a mic. Sir. My name is Detective Brian Bugler. I'm a detective. I've been with the police department for about 17 and a half years. Got hired in 2003. I am a sergeant in investigations. I've been in that role as a sergeant for the last 2 years, but I've been in investigations for the last 13 and a half years. There are 6 investigators in our office. So I help manage what's happening in the investigative branch. Typically, uniform officer takes a report. If it's a case that has a suspect or has to move on to an investigator, I get those cases, or those in my office will then get those cases, and we'll work that investigation forward from there. I'm not from Plainfield. I'm also transplant. I came here in '03 when I got hired. So that's me, and that's my role.
So I'm going to give each of them an opportunity to speak up and talk about what's going on with the Plainfield Police Department and the County Sheriff's Department, and some of the initiatives and programs we're doing. I'm just kind of giving an update.
Yep. And again, this is, to us, this is very formal for us in our normal community conversations, right, with the microphone, but I understand we're live streaming and all of that. So if anyone has questions along the way, please just stop me and we will answer any questions that we have. We brought a wide swath of our officers because we want you to get to know all of us, right? And it's not just here's the chief here to talk to you about the agency and get a different perspective from everybody that works on the department. And many times it's hard for me to answer all of your questions because, as Kyle said, you know, I'm not on the road anymore. We're stuck in an office, and the greatest opportunity we have is driving on the street when we go to lunch and actually going out and feeling like a police officer for just a moment before we go back to the office. So they have a lot of the everyday experience that can answer a lot of your questions. Right now, the Plainfield Police Department, we are authorized to have 63 sworn police officers. Right now we have 62 because we had one that just retired after 20 years of service. So we're getting ready to start a new process. But 63 is quite a bit. That's the most that we've ever had. We are the largest agency in Hendricks County. We're also the busiest agency in Hendricks County. So we base our numbers off of our calls for service. It's not based off of population, because if it was based off of population, the FBI suggests that we have 1.8 officers per 1,000, and we're right about 40,000, so that's going to put us close to 80 officers, which the town we can't pay that kind of bill, right, to have 80 police officers. So we base our numbers off of actual calls for service and how much time is spent on those calls for service. We have a vision statement, which is working together to make change that matters. It's very important for us having that vision and working towards that vision, because anybody can make change, and this is a community. It's a small community that's growing, so as a community, we have to work together. We can't just do this by ourselves. It takes everybody. It takes the village or the town to you know, when you see a crime, to call us. If you've witnessed something, call us, let us know, cooperate. We've always had a great relationship with the community. We're going to continue to have that great relationship, and we're really not going to change just for anything. We want to make sure that the changes that we're making are lasting and that we're really focusing on the future. So the three initiatives that go with that are building relationships, empowering others, and focusing on the future. We build relationships just like what we're doing right now, spending time with the community members, talking to you, and really getting to know you, because we are human beings just as you are. So we all have flaws, we all have trials and tribulations, and we want to make sure that we're truly communicating and working together as a team. The empowerment piece is that I have patrol officers that are working at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not going to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning unless they call me and say, hey, we need you, right? So it begins with me. I empower my department and the agency that work for the department to essentially be the chief of police at 3 o'clock in the morning. So if you're talking to a patrol officer at 3 a.m., they should be able to make the decisions that they need to make at that point in time. And we empower all of you in our community to again, be part of your community and help us and be a part of what we're trying to do, which is essentially create a safe community for everyone that visits and lives here and works here. Finally, is focusing on the future. We know, and you know, because right outside your windows right here, lots of things have changed, and the community continues to grow and continues to change. And if I continue to just focus on issues today, I'm not going to be able to focus on what's really happening in the future. Technology is changing at a pace that we can't keep up with. We are government, so government is on a good day, we're 5 years behind technology because it takes us that long to find funding and do the research and put up all of the things that we have to do. But we always have to look to the next thing that's going to help us out, that's going to help us police better without hiring just people. So we have to look at all aspects of different things that are out there. So that's kind of our focus and what we look at. Again, you know the community as well as I do. It's growing, it's changing. We really just are trying to get the message out that we love the small town feel. We want to keep that, but in the same breath, right, it's changing, and we want to make sure that we're welcoming to everybody, and that's what these conversations are all about, and that's why we're going to different places each time. Coffee with a Cop, to me, looked like a middle school dance, and that all the guys were on one side and all the girls were on the other, and nobody wanted to dance, right? And so we just sat there and listened to music, and so we went to coffee shops, and the cops stood on one side and everybody else stood to the other, or we would hijack people coming in that simply were trying to get a breakfast sandwich, and they really didn't want to talk to us, right? And so these have been so much better, and we just want to continue that. Always open for conversation or questions or concerns. We don't want it to just be here. So I really embrace the fact that, you know, if you have issues or concerns, give us a call. If you just want to sit down and have coffee, do that too. It'll be decaf for me, but, you know, I'm always up for a cup of coffee. Some of the new things that are changing with us is we've been in about a 1.5-year process of rewriting all of our policies. So long before all of the police departments in the United States hit the media and we became the stars of the nightly news, we had already decided to start looking at our policy and rewriting it. We're part of a company called Lexipol, which the Sheriff's Department have done as well, and that is going through every single policy and looking at it, rewriting it, making sure that it is current and up to date, and then that company, anytime a law or a best practice changes, they within 30 or 60 days, they send you an updated policy and say, this is the changes that are made, and you probably should change yours as well. Before, that was up to us, and sometimes some of these laws that really weren't big news, we just missed it along the way, and so now this is much better that it's continually in front of our face, and we're able to update it. The other piece of that is that every month our employees get basically a quiz, and so they will get questions about policy. A lot of it is kind of scenario based, and they have to answer those questions so that they know policy. That's another big part, is that just like anything else, right? We're sitting in a church, so if I was just to throw out a scripture and say, tell me about it, right? To know the Bible inside and out, that's a big book, lots of pages. Same thing with policy. We have thousands and thousands of pages of policy, and to expect an officer to know every single one of them by heart is difficult. So that's why the tests come in, and it's much easier for them to be able to research things if they need that. The other thing that is hot on my list that I'm really excited about, everybody should know that mental health is a huge problem right now throughout the nation. Mental health of police officers is also, or public safety in general, is something that you may not hear about it all the time, but it's on our minds all the time, because police officers are continually out in that element, and they're seeing the worst of the worst on a daily basis. So they are exposed to things quite often, and what they say is that a police officer could experience a PTSD type incident at least once every 6 months, where the average citizen experiences maybe 1 or 2 in their lifetime. So there's lots of things that we see that's not necessarily glamorous, and so the town of Plainfield agreed to hire what's called a well-being manager. That will be a certified therapist that will come on the payroll. They will report to the police chief, and they will oversee our chaplaincy program, and they will also oversee the mental and emotional health of all public safety employees of the town of Plainfield. So where that comes into play is that right now we do have a chaplain program, as Gary Tanner was speaking about. He's part of that. But the struggle that we have is we may have 2 chaplains, and right, both of them are Methodist. Well, that doesn't quite help me if, you know, someone of another faith has an emergency and we need to go and be with them and speak to them. So we really want to reach out to all faith-based in Plainfield, and we have quite a few, and make sure that we have representatives from each. So that way, in those times when we've lost a loved one or something traumatic has happened, we have the right person there to talk to you, and not just the last person that signed up. So there'll be a lot of stuff that goes along with that, a lot of training, but I'm hoping that here within the next 6 months we will have a pretty big campaign to go out and look for more people to help with that chaplaincy program. So that's really what I've got. Again, I'm glad to be here. I'm happy to be here. Enjoy this community. I live in the community and work here and play here and everything else, right? So it is important to me to continue these conversations and be able to speak with you. Okay.
So I'll just start off by saying that I appreciate the chief and all the other Plainfield department members and staff that are here, because it is a great showing of our cooperation that we have. Obviously, we work together as a team to help keep the community safe, and I think this is a great example of that. And you know, if we have an issue outside of the town limits of Plainfield and we need help, they don't hesitate to come help us. The same as our men and women don't hesitate to come into the town and help, because it's about protecting and serving the community. Hendricks County is 408 square miles. It's quite a big county. We have over 170,000 population. We have, I think the latest I heard, we were third fastest growing in the state. We have been number 2, and so for many, many years we have been growing. I grew up in Danville, graduated from Danville High School. A lot has changed since we moved to Danville in the early 80s, and it is continuing to change every day. So the biggest difference between the Plainfield Police Department and the Sheriff's Department is we protect and serve the community that is outside the corporate limits. We also run the jail, which anyone who is arrested in Hendricks County comes to the Hendricks County Jail, which is located in Danville. And we service the courts and any paperwork that comes from the courts. And that doesn't mean that Plainfield doesn't serve warrants or something to that effect, but we service the courts. Any civil orders, warrants are mainly our responsibility as well. So as far as the Sheriff's Department goes, again, we work very well together, but there is a clear difference between the local and the county department as far as what we manage as a department. We too use Lexipol for our policies. We started that in late 2019, and it is something that has been a long work in progress, but is definitely worth it. As far as the mental health side of what we're working on, we are starting to use an app called Cortico, which is for the mental health of our employees. It is a place that they can go, that they know that as an administration, we're on board, that we want them as mentally healthy as they are physically healthy. We want to make sure that when they come out to see you, that they're of the right frame of mind, that they're not showing up with baggage that we haven't helped them deal with. And so that's something that is just changing a culture in a department. It really is. Because in the past, that wasn't something that administrations encouraged. It was something that if you spoke out and said that you needed help, that it would potentially cause you issues. And we want to make sure as leaders that we're on the side of getting our people help and not trying to push that to a side and let it build up. Biggest thing that we do in the Sheriff's Department for community relations, I think one of the biggest things is we've assigned 174 subdivisions to our deputies, and those are non-incorporated subdivisions in our jurisdiction. And our hope is, as we continue to grow that program, that our deputies will get into the neighborhoods, roll down their windows, get out of their cars and talk to the neighbors. And that's something that we've talked about in the last community conversation, and something that I would continue to encourage is that I just dealt with a young lady a few weeks ago that had not spoke to her neighbor, who they share backyards together, and they'd lived there 3 years. Didn't know his name, had never spoke with him. And I think that's a shame, right? We are all in this together. We can't do our job without the support of our community. And for you, I think as a neighborhood, as a resident, that you need to get out and talk to your neighbors and get to know one another, and get to know your law enforcement officers that are patrolling your neighborhood as well. If we're all knowing each other and speaking, we're going to do a lot better job of protecting and serving this community. Again, we can't do this by ourselves.
All right, so I'm going to open it up now for any questions and answers session. Anything you want to talk about, you have a question about, bring it up. I've got a little bit of everybody here, administrators, detectives, and patrol officers. So anybody want to get started off?
I have two questions. First one is, are your facilities adequate to handle the growth in the population, both in the county and in Plainfield? And what do you see down the road as far as an improvement in the incidence of crime or reduction of crime, that type of thing?
So when you talk about are the facilities adequate, what do you mean by facilities?
I guess your buildings, the jail, you know, where the offices operate out of, the real estate.
Yeah, I'll let him talk because they're building a new one. So.
So we are in the process of building a new jail. We broke ground on that last fall, and the hope is that the new jail will be done hopefully by the end of the fall of 2022. So if we can start moving people over, at least administratively, by that time we'll have succeeded in the timeline. But we are moving from a 252-bed jail to a 574-bed jail. The current jail has well beyond its expectancy of life, and it has been a lot of Band-Aids and a lot of things trying to keep it going. It is difficult. I will tell you, I know the sheriff has been in the office on Christmas Eve mopping up water in his office because of the inmates being above his office flooding the cells. And obviously with gravity, it wasn't a great design to begin with, to have our administrative offices below the cells, but unfortunately that's the building that we inherited, and the new building will not have that. And so there's a lot of technology going into the new jail, and it will be a jail that is, you know, Hendricks County can be proud of, and honestly the people from all over the Midwest will come to see the technology that's put into it. It is not going to raise our amount of employees needed to run the jail, even though we're nearly doubling in size.
I would say on our side, we moved in 1999 when we were half the size that we are today. We have outgrown our building. The difference is we don't house inmates, so it's a little bit easier for us to deal with it. And the majority of, so 60% of our police force, or 41 police officers, are in patrol, and they live in their patrol cars. So if you see the big Tahoes, right, that was why we kind of moved in that direction. I would say within probably the next 10 years, at least the next 10 years, we're going to have to do something. Because as it is now, we don't have enough space to, if we wanted a department-wide meeting to have every employee there, we have to go somewhere else just because we don't have the size. But you see the new government center is going up, so there's been some other places that's their only places. They have to work in an office, have outgrown that, and so those projects need to be constructed first before we start looking at that. As far as it goes with crime, there's lots of things out there that are happening. Some of the newest things that we're working on just for the public satisfaction is that there's, we moved to a new police reporting system called Motorola. So all of our computer-aided dispatch and our report system is done through Motorola. That unfortunately cut a lot of our ties that we had for information sharing with the public in the beginning. But we have signed a contract with Motorola is like a Legos construction project where they only give you portions of it, but then you can go to Legoland and spend another $69, right, and get the next piece. So they've got a great business model, but it's very expensive. So we have purchased that. We're just waiting for the legal, but with that comes a lot of analytical data that will go out to the public so that you know what's going on. We've just signed another contract with our body camera with Motorola, which creates another app which you'll be able to look on your phone and see actually what's going on. So if you see a police officer somewhere and you say, I wonder what's going on, you can look to your passenger, because we're hands-free, and say, hey, open the app and tell me what's going on. And there's a couple-minute delay in there for officer safety reasons, but it'll tell you exactly what's going on, so you know what that is. We're working a lot with Indianapolis. They have a gun crime initiative. task force that just got approved this summer, and that is really working. We all know the gun crime that's going on out in Indianapolis right now. A lot of that bleeds over because, as you know, we share a border with Indianapolis, and so the big push is to, when we come across a gun, to look at it, to do some forensics on it and see, has it been used in a crime anywhere else in the nation, who's it connected to. So we're working very hard with them. We have an officer that is assigned to the Metro Drug Task Force, which that is the Indianapolis Drug Task Force that has a lot of other agencies with it with us, and so that helps us combat the drug problems and everything else. So we have, Kyle does, in the patrol side, do a great job of staying on top of what's going on and being proactive in our police work, and so I feel confident of the future.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Next. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering, what are the rules or the laws in terms of discharging a gun within the city limits? You know, like if I go out on my back porch and sit there in the evening and all of a sudden I hear somebody target shooting, and it's a pretty dense neighborhood. Are there any rules?
Do you want to answer that, Kyle?
I love that I get pointed to on that one. I'm not in my backyard shooting, I promise. As it pertains, it's essentially the state statute, which is whether or not that was safe. There is no local ordinance specifically toward discharging a firearm in the town of Plainfield. They've worked on it. It got really convoluted to the point where, you know, if a little kid was target shooting with a BB gun or a pellet gun, that could have violated the ordinance. And to my knowledge, it just kind of went away. They didn't continue that debate. So it's whether or not someone was being reckless, which then rises to the state statute level. You know, if they're shooting and there's proper target backstops and things like that, then there's not much we can do. Shooting a weapon into the air is obviously not a great thing. I heard Jack reference gravity earlier, and it still works on a bullet, so that still has to come down. And we certainly do respond to several calls for service. I won't necessarily say on a nightly basis, but folks that hear a loud bang and into it that, hey, maybe that's a firearm. I can say that I have personally responded to several shots fired calls in the area of the law enforcement academy. Typically, that's okay because they're doing everything they're supposed to be doing, but folks that are new to the area and all of a sudden start hearing what sounds like automatic weapons fire, it can alarm them. But to answer your question, no, there isn't a specific ordinance in the town of Plainfield. It's all about that state statute and whether or not somebody's being safe.
All right. Does that answer your question? Hopefully he did a good job. We got one right here.
Occasionally I see around town a car that's marked community service. Is that part of the police department or is that the town or?
That's our community service officers, community support. They
usually have yellow lights
yes,
flashing.
yeah, because they are not sworn police officers, so they are all part-time employees, which is a great plug for us. So if you go on vacation and you're going to be gone and you want us to watch your house for you, we're not going to just sit there. But they go out on a daily basis. So you fill out a form, say I'm leaving on vacation, I'm leaving this day at time, here is a contact number, here's the cars that should be here. And then if we show up and all of a sudden your front door is open, you will get a phone call. Say, hey, we're at your house, your front door is open, or we're at your house and there's a blue Chevrolet, is it supposed to be here? You can say, yep, that's my aunt, and that's fine. But that's a service that we provide. They also do lockouts, that if you're broken down somewhere, they'll pick you up and take you where you need to go, get gasoline, different things like that. So it is a function that supports our patrol officers so that they can do those other things that are of greater importance, but yet the community is still getting that same service.
And I will encourage you to pick up one of our pamphlets here at the end of the night. These pamphlets put out information on all the services and programs we provide to the public.
person's perspective of how we feel. So, as a black man growing up, we were taught and showed things like videos of slave patrols. That's how police departments started. So when we see police departments, we wonder why maybe some of us are fearful when we think of police. It's not, oh, they're just bad guys, but we being taught from children coming up is that, you know, they put the dogs on you. This is what things happen as a slave trade. So my question is, and just by the way, these are, and they know they didn't do anything like that, but Henry Trump is probably some of the best officers I've ever run across. I'm not even gonna do that. But so question to the chief is, as a black man, if I get pulled over and the rest of the town, I don't want to stop usually in the dark. I'm a little nervous. I don't know. Everybody on the forces may not be used to black people. They may have grown up in other areas, but not really been around us. So as a black man, sometimes I'm like, no, I don't want to pull over in the dark. I would rather pull over somewhere where it's lit. What is the policy that if the lights come on, and particularly even in the county, the lights come on, is it all right for me to throw my flashes on and go to a well-lit area? And then another question is, what is your policy? I don't know at all. I've got two of them. What is your policy for putting dogs on people? So those are two of my questions.
Yep, and I'll touch on it, and then I'll let some of the other people talk a little bit. So to say that we have specific policy on like a distance, right? But and you can, we've had this several times when I'm on patrol, and I'll probably have Zach talk about it here in just a minute. But you know, if I turn on my lights and I'm trying to pull somebody over, and they immediately turn on their flashers and slow down, right? Normally I have an idea that they're looking for somewhere else to pull over. When we start going for miles, right, now we start thinking, okay, and to be transparent, I've been in pursuits with people that are having issues with their diabetics, right? They're in their shock, and they have no idea what's going on. And I've pulled up next to them and honking, and you know, and they're just stopping at red lights, and when it turns green, they take off again. And here I am with lights and sirens going. You know, we're not going to get all crazy with that. We have really reduced kind of our pursuit policy over the years, and kind of nailed that down a little bit more, where there has to be a little bit more there than just a general traffic stop. But we want people to feel safe. It's when we turn our lights on and then they floor it and take off and start weaving through traffic, we start having issues. As far as the dog goes, that's use of force. So if we have, again, not to get real deep into our use of force policy, when all of these things happen, we completely rewrote our use of force policy. And so the dog is no different than a taser or any other of our weapons that we would use. So if someone goes and robs Walmart and comes running out and takes off running, and we're in foot chase and a canine comes, then we can deploy the dog as we would a taser or any other weapon that we can't shoot at them, of course, but it's a non-lethal device that we use.
And adding on to the canine portion of it, if you see a canine being ran around a vehicle on a traffic stop or something like that, usually we get a lot of calls on that. So case law states that if an officer is in the duration of their traffic stop, that they're performing their normal duties. So I'm requesting identification, I'm walking back to my car, I'm processing the information on my radio or in the computer. If a canine shows up during that time, they are allowed to run the dog around the vehicle if it's during the duration of the traffic stop. Where the line starts to draw is when officers are prolonging their traffic stop in order to get a canine there that may be coming from a distance. So you cannot hold anyone unlawfully or past the detention time that you'd be doing your normal traffic stop duties in order to request a canine just because you may think that there's drugs in the car. Now, absent reasonable suspicion. Now, if you have reasonable suspicion that there would be narcotics or something illegal in the vehicle, then you can hold that person on that traffic stop to request a canine to come and run around that vehicle. But absent reasonable suspicion, you cannot prolong any traffic stop any longer than normal to request a dog. So I don't know if that answered part of the canine question as well.
Yeah, I was just concerned when I see, and once again, looking in our history, and how some of these, in particular the dog, was used. And I know we was on my life, I understand. It's a policy I don't, there's nothing I can do about it, obviously, but it's a policy I don't care for. But I always want to know, and so here's the first chance I really, and I think I've never really asked this question, but as I thought about it today, and as I see dogs and I've seen different videos, I mean, they're just ripping somebody apart and it's like, stop moving. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, this dog's kind of chewing his guy up and yeah, stop moving. That's pretty hard. So that was just one of my questions, what causes, what is the reason for actually letting that dog go home somewhere?
Well, and there's dual purpose dogs, and all of our dogs, we have 5 of them that are dual purpose. And the narcotic odor is one thing that they're trained to, but they're also trained to track. And a lot of times, it's a well-known secret that if you commit a crime, you probably don't want to be there by the time the police get there, right? So a lot of times they flee the scene. And the dogs are a great tool for tracking because humans are gross creatures and they slough skin and leave odors behind that you and I aren't going to pick up in the middle of a field at 2 a.m. The dogs tune right into it. And I've never been a canine handler. I'm a lot like you. I have a dog, but I don't want a dog. You know, I'm kind of counting days, like, oh, please. But they get into that odor and they just lock in. And once they lock in, the canine handlers all give announcements and give people the opportunity in those circumstances. Make yourself known, show your hands, and the dog's not going to bite. Now, they make those announcements, and typically they'll announce it twice and say, I will release my dog. And then you see, and I've been on those scenes several times, you can't see the suspect necessarily completely, but you can see them thinking, do they really have a dog? Are they lying to me right now? And then when they get that answer, they don't like that answer very much because the dog's dragging them out from underneath whatever they're hiding underneath or securing them. But they're trained, and we do train our officers that once a dog is making an apprehension, we can still apply handcuffs. And the job of the handler is to control the dog while the officers are applying the handcuffs. And once the handcuffs are on, that dog's coming off. They can be pretty gnarly. And oftentimes they're not bad at all. You know, you'll see a couple of marks, but they do get bad at times. So we do train our officers to immediately try to secure that person because that's really all we're after. Nothing we do is punitive. It's all just to gain compliance or gain control, and then it's done.
Just to give a little perspective, do you have any idea offhand how many dog bites we've had in the last 2 or 3 years?
Actual physical apprehensions in the past 2 or 3 years? Is that what you said? I think physical apprehensions maybe 3. We've had what are called more civil apprehensions where they give those announcements and folks surrender. We've had 40, 50 of those. So way more often folks are complying once they know that I'm about ready to have Rover on me, you know, this little land shark, and I don't want anything to do with it. So it's a good tool in that way.
Thank you.
Hi, speaking of dogs, I'm an animal lover. How many dogs do you have on your force?
We have 5 now. We have 5 dual-purpose dogs. The majority of them are German Shepherds. We do have, I think we only have 1 Malinois, right?
Yes.
Maybe 2. Remember, was Chris's dog a Malinois? Mm-hmm. So we have 2 Malinois and 3 German Shepherds now.
I think if I was a suspect, I'd rather get dog bit than shot.
Yeah?
And one more question. Are they, okay, when you have an officer that wants to be a canine officer, do they go through a process? Because I've heard stories where they didn't take care of their dogs too well.
All of our canine handlers are selected through a fairly extensive process. They have to take a written test. They have to actually, they go before an oral board that is comprised of canine handlers from our agency and other agencies. The entirety of the Hendricks County canines work very well together. They train together on a monthly basis, and it's kind of one of those things where a canine handler knows who's going to be a good canine handler more than I do, especially as a person who doesn't particularly want a dog, right? And it takes a special person to come and do this job to begin with, but a person who can deal with all of the smells that a dog creates and all the sounds that a dog creates as they drive around for 12 hours, I want nothing to do with that. I'm pretty particular about the way my car is. I don't want dog hair on me, and these guys step out and they're covered in hair and they love life. So the canine handlers really kind of help dictate that. They also do a physical fitness test, and we actually go to their homes and inspect their homes to make sure that the conditions there are conducive to having a police canine, because they're not pets. And that's one of the things that is fairly dangerous, that folks see a police canine and, well, can I pet him? And you make that movement and dad's standing there, and that dog interprets this as they're gonna hurt dad, and a snip or a snap is conducted there. So for the well-being of the dog, we make sure that little kids who walk by can't come up and put their hands in where a kennel would be, and the officer has to actually specify this is where the kennel is, and we pay for the kennel to make sure that the dog's contained. Most are not house pets. We do have a couple that sleep inside. One in particular, you've probably seen Jocko. Jocko is his handler's like best buddy. So they do everything together. Rob really needs a life outside of being Jocko's handler. But we're about ready to put him up on dating sites and stuff to get him into the real world, I think. But, our handlers are screened pretty heavily.
I think part of being an animal lover, though, is understanding that they are working. It's a tool, and it's a working dog, and so no different than dogs in Alaska that are pulling sleds. If that dog is kept inside all winter long, and it doesn't have the coat, and then they go out and do a 2-hour track, that dog's not going to have the coat that it needs. And same thing in the winter or in the summer. You know, if it's been inside in a 69-degree house and it's not shed all of its hair. And so sometimes, you know, I've never been a canine handler, I've been a dog lover. It's hard to understand that, of why is this dog left outside? Well, because it's a working dog, and it has to be, so that it's able to perform when it needs to perform.
One of the questions I had was, what is the education level of the average officer that's on the department? And what are things that are not traditionally covered by the education that you receive coming into the force that you try to instill in individuals that are actually in the department? So whether that be how to handle mental health crises, whether that be to handle somebody that's experiencing homelessness, things like that.
I will touch on it, and then I'll let everybody else talk. So our education level varies from a high school diploma to people that have received their master's degree and probably will go get a doctorate. The struggle is that in law enforcement, if you get a PhD in criminal justice, congratulations, you might be able to be either a instructor somewhere, at a higher education facility, or you can make baskets for a living, but there's not much there. And just from my perspective in this job, what you are taught in the higher educational facilities in criminal justice and things like that do not translate over well into what we do, because we don't hire you as a professor, we hire you as a patrol officer, then you can move into other areas. And what we get a lot in college is, why did the person commit the crime? Well, that doesn't do anything for us, right? And so the life experience for us is so much more important, that we know that you have some sort of life before and after this, and you didn't just go to high school for 4 years, college for 4 years. You've never had a job, you've never had a girlfriend or a boyfriend or anything in your life, and now you want to go out and try to tell a 57-year-old man and woman that have been married for 20 years on how to get along. So life experience is huge for us. But I will push that question down.
And I would agree, it varies for us as well. And, you know, all of our people, including everyone up here, went to the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. But that's basic training. Then we go through a field training program, and each of our departments are a little bit different. Hours may be different. We're a little over 500 hours in our field training program. And that's where you really learn the nuts and bolts of how to talk to people and how to do this job. And, you know, beyond that, it's the experience of law enforcement. That's where, you know, a deputy or an officer that's been around for 10 years is better equipped to talk to people, better apt to handle situations than a rookie is. And that's just the experience of life. We're lucky in the Sheriff's Department because we'll hire you at about any age, and we don't have an age limit for you to be hired with us. And so we do get an opportunity to get a little more experienced individuals at times, and that does help us. And, you know, for us, again, covering 408 square miles, we may have a deputy that is, you know, a good 15 or 20 minutes from anyone else coming to help them. And so they really have to be equipped with the ability to talk to people and to deal with situations on their own.
I think technology has really made it difficult, especially for the younger generation that are coming in for law enforcement, because they're so instant gratification and quick, you know, with the cell phones and the computers and everything like that. So we really try to build on just basic communication skills to where, you know, that's on my squad. If you can talk to someone, that is the number one thing that I think is the biggest, whether it be a suicidal person, a domestic, whether it be children, on a traffic stop, anything like that. If you can't talk to people, then it's very, very difficult to be an effective police officer, in my opinion. And then, you know, going back to what the chief said his initiative is with building relationships, in my opinion, I think that starts with the patrol, because we're the ones in uniform that people see. And I think it's great that everyone came here tonight, but you know, the people we really, really need is the young folk and the youth in here, because those are the ones we really need to be building the relationships with, because they're going to be the future of this town. And you know, the way we do that, which I tell my officers all the time, is if you're going to patrol the neighborhood, don't just drive through the neighborhood. Get out of your car and speak to people. Talk to the neighbors, because the neighbors and the good people in those neighborhoods, they're the ones that know who the bad people are, and they are the ones that know what's going on. So those are the ones that people you need to speak to, because they can help the police department in doing our job. So it comes back to his initiative with the building relationships, and I think that that starts with the patrol level and the folks in the uniform.
And I can say, you know, I got a bachelor's degree from Indiana State University, and I loved my time there. I thought it was a wonderful experience. It was in criminology, and a good part of that study was exactly that, you know, corrections-based or trying to figure out why people commit crimes or things like that. I had probably 4 courses there that pertained directly to criminal law and evidence collection that were practical. Way more of what you learn is experiential, and it's, yes, can I decide whether or not this violated a statute? And can I take action legally? That's very important, obviously. But the other side of that is learning as a young officer, and I'll be 100% transparent on this. I came into Plainfield having been at a department where there were 6 officers total. When you have no backup, you have to talk a mean game and then also back yourself up when you're talking that game. And if you can't get them to comply verbally, then you got to do what you got to do. Then in between that, I went to Iraq along with the chief, and then we returned back. I got hired here at Plainfield, and early on it was, I'm going to ask you once, I'm going to tell you, and then we're going to go. And it was very quick, and that's a very young person game, because once you start getting into that rhythm of I'll ask you once, I'll ask you nicely, I'll call you sir the entire time, then I'm going to tell you, hey, comply with me, and you don't do that, then I'm going to enforce the compliance. I can survive that much better at 24, 25, 26, 27. But about 28 years old, stuff starts to hurt. Right? And into the 40s, it hurts way more, and there's more surgeries that accompany those kinds of things and stuff like that. So teaching our officers, and the key to me kind of piggybacks off of what Zach was saying, is simply meeting people where they're at. And that's a hard skill, and a lot of times that's something that develops over time. But most of the time when we're talking to a person, and I've been married almost 20 years, and anytime my wife is upset and I've attempted to calm down, it goes the opposite direction. So learning from experiences like that, and when somebody's in a heightened state, not approaching them with that calm down type of attitude, but trying to meet them where they're at, and why are they upset? You know, what are we doing here? Is there a trigger in this area that we can remove to get this person to calm down a little bit? Maybe my tone needs to change a little bit. Maybe they've had bad experiences with police officers in the past. And what I really push, and the chief and I spend a lot of time with our new officers when we hire them, of delivering to them the idea that if you take one extra step during a call for service, you're probably doing the right thing. If you can dust somebody off after, you know, a bad moment in their life and leave them with a feeling that, yeah, I really care about it, then that's great, right? And that's what makes a difference. And a lot of times where we have those interactions and we don't do that quick dust off, you know, we stop a car, it matches the description of an armed robbery suspect's vehicle, we stop them, we've got our guns drawn, we're calling them out of the car, and we handcuff them before we ask them a single question. And then we come to find out, oh, the license plate number that the victim provided was off by a digit, and this is not at all that person. Or we stop a car with a stolen license plate and do that same process and find out that the owner of that car who reported that car stolen got their car back but never bothered to let us know, which happens. And we don't do that quick dust off and tell them, hey, I'm sorry, this is what the circumstances were, and this is what happened. And we just leave it at that interaction. Oh, you're unarrested now. Go on and do good things. I'm out. That's when we get the phone call of the complaint. That's when we get the I was mistreated moment. And it's making sure our young officers know, just take a moment. Take a moment there, or take a moment with a victim, and let them know that you honestly care, and we'll do everything we can to make you whole again.
And I'll add to that, as far as the training and education goes. It takes about, with all the months it takes to vet and go through a hiring process, and then we hire the officer and we send them to a 6-week training at ILEA, and then they come back and do about 5 or 6 months
hours
of field training with an officer. It's well over a year before we start a hiring process, and actually they are solo on their own. And then to add to that also, the state of Indiana only requires officers to have 24 hours of ongoing training every year as mandates. So firing our firearms, shooting and driving our squad cars, domestic violence, training our defensive tactics, those types of things, those core functions that we do, those are required every year. Now, last year, if you saw our end of the year report, our officers had an average of 91 hours of training last year. Our department is very proactive about additional training and education for our officers, more so than most departments. And I think that's why Plainfield's so attractive for officers to come.
I can add to that too, just, you know, when officers come to the department, they're not like just blank slates either, you know, they're just like you, each one of you, you know, you come from a variety of backgrounds and experiences that you've had, you know. You mentioned mental health. You know, I worked in a group home for adults with mental disorders for, you know, a year before I even came here, you know, and then I get to meet another officer. He used to work in Logansport State Mental Hospital, and we ended up talking, like, we knew some of the same people, you know. It's kind of crazy. But it's like, you know, you have these experiences that they're not just forgotten, you know. They can now be absorbed into the community and enforcing things, and even if that's an interest that person has, that officer has, you know, they can find avenues within the department. You know, different positions will come available, or different certifications, or different things that if they, you know, express an interest in that, then they can start going to some schools to maybe get certified in that particular area. And it ends up being a win-win for the officer. They get more training in that, and in the community that they enforce the laws in. So I think it's a pretty neat deal how it works.
One question, do the officers learn body language?
What was the question? Can you repeat the question? Because I don't think anybody heard it.
The question was, do the officers learn body language? And we through experience, yeah. So nonverbal communicates so much, and the officer needs to be able to see that. And the officers, I think, through the academy and also just in our training, we just had some vehicle training and where you go up and approach the driver. That's something that we train on and practice on, and so, obviously they're looking at the nonverbal stuff, but in the back of their mind, they're concerned that it could be a lethal situation. So that's always there. It's not ever going to go away. But they have to be able to make those decisions and see that what are the possibilities, and then make sure that the right decision is made.
That's a big component of, like I said, we get them for about 2 weeks before they start field training after the academy. And one of the specific things that I cover is body language. It's one thing for me to sit in a room, in a classroom, and tell them, if you see somebody ball their fists or look at a distance or they're starting to check the area to see if anybody else is around, it's one thing for me to say that, but then it's another thing for them to experience it with a field training officer right next to them. And a lot of times our field training officers have way more experience than these new folks. And they may be out in an alley in the middle of the night saying, what are you doing out here? And having this conversation that the newest officer is leading, but the newest officer is not picking up on those cues. And then the FTO will chime in with why are you balling your fist? Did you just square up like you're about ready to throw a punch? And they're verbalizing it not just to the suspect, but to that new officer so that they can see, oh yeah, I didn't know what I didn't know, but now I'm about ready to receive a punch, right? So it's better to learn that way than to taste it yourself. So that's one of the things that our FTOs are really cued in on.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And with the experiences I had in the past, working for security for many years and stuff, and working with metro cops in Vegas and stuff like that, I was in a relationship on both sides, working for like first of all, that old casinos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a guy.
Sure.
But the thing is, number one, a lot of times the body language is when people come in, they haven't done anything wrong, except they might put the hoodie on,
Mm-hmm.
you can see their face, stuff like that. Are they carrying a bag? Are they constantly on the phone?
Sure.
They haven't done anything wrong yet, but it's something that, with experience, and it would be the same thing out in the field in general.
Absolutely.
As a police officer, to go out and OJT, and as the months and years go by, you now learn all that.
Well, that's what we refer to as an indicator. And indicators have changed a lot over the years, because when I first started, if you were driving down the street and you saw the inside of a car that was full of smoke, that usually meant something else. Now it might mean that they're smoking marijuana, or it might mean that they're vaping, right? It might mean one thing, it might mean something that's completely legal. When I first started, everybody tucked their shirts in for the most part. And if somebody had their shirt untucked, that might have been an indicator that they were concealing a weapon. Now it's very rare for people to tuck their shirts in, myself included, because I am carrying a weapon, right? So things change a lot over the years. So it's kind of picking up on those things. And it was kind of that Never Land thing for a while there, where people are getting out, and I had this moment going into the bank to make a deposit, and I get out and I put my mask on and thought, man, this is weird, right? I'm masking up to go into a bank. And at one point in time, that would have got me, the phone call would have been happening before I hit the door, and now they're just, he put a mask on because everybody has to wear a mask.
That's a scary part,
sure. Well, and I got a huge kick out of it. A city in Ohio passed a law saying it was illegal to wear a mask and commit a crime during the COVID epidemic. And I thought, well, that's brilliant. Now that they said that you can't do that, nobody's going to commit crimes, right? So
I got one right here. Well, we're going to do 3 or 4 more questions, and then we'll break up into one-on-one sessions with the officers so you guys can get some refreshment stuff, because I don't want this to go too long tonight.
Well, fortunately, I've only had this happen one time, but we had a medical emergency in our family in the middle of the night, and suddenly your life changes from calm to your house is full of medical personnel and the police. And the Plainfield police were just wonderful, so compassionate. And I want to pass that along, to not be afraid.
Well, I'll add to that before we move on to the next question. If I don't know if dispatch is coming to talk to you, but I'm going to plug them real quick. Our dispatch center is located in Plainfield, but they service all of Hendricks County. So one of the wonderful things is that I can hear what the Sheriff's Department is doing, or Brownsburg, or Avon, or everybody is together on the same radio channel. But they have a new system called Smart 911, and you can go on their website. You can register everything about yourself. You can have the pictures of your dogs. You can have a picture of yourself, all of your information that you need. When you call 911, only when you call 911, it then populates all of that information for the dispatcher. That dispatcher can then relay that information to us. If you have a special needs person in your home, that information is there, right? Things that we need to know, because if there's an emergency and we're coming into your house and you have a Rottweiler on the other side of the door that wants to eat me, I would like to know that long before I go in. If I have a child that's on the spectrum, so if you have a child that has special needs, or somebody else, a family member in there, right, that's good to know, so that way we're looking for them, we know how to talk to them. So I'd really suggest going to their website. I think it's hccc.org, and you can register all your information. Again, it's only when you call 911, and then once you hang up, all that information goes away. We can't see it anymore. So very, very helpful new technology for us.
Hi, my name is Philip Clay. I'm lucky enough to have grown up here in Plainfield most of my life. Actually got a chance to play with the Chief's oldest son at YMCA camp, so known him for quite some time. A shameless plug, like he said, to the Chief. A lot of people don't realize that the Chief is actively involved in not just the town, but also the county with the Hendricks County Alliance for Diversity. He was very welcoming, and Charles has been a part of these conversations as well, so I'm glad to see him here tonight. But could you elaborate to the community a little bit more about what you've done and the rest of the department as well, reaching out to minorities and influencing change during kind of a tumultuous time right now?
Sure. So I think everybody has heard of George Floyd, right? And that happened, and that was a time that really thrust all of us kind of in the limelight of what are you doing. So at that point, we realized yes, that didn't happen here. I hope it never happens here, but there's a population that we need to engage with and make sure that they're okay and understand what we're doing and what we're trying to do, and open that communication. So we really put a call out, and it's really what has led us into community. If you look at our advertisement, community conversations, the last part of unity is capitalized, right? Because we're trying to build unity within Hendricks County and anywhere, right? So in Plainfield, we have a lot of people that come here just to shop or work or visit, and if you want to buy a house here, hopefully you have a job that pays 6 figures, because houses, or if you have a house and you want to make some money, put it for sale. It's a tough market to live in Plainfield right now, but we have a lot of people coming to Plainfield, and so we kind of partnered with the Hendricks County Alliance for Diversity and started those conversations and made sure that those open lines of communication. That's how I got to know Charles, right? Is through all of this, saying, hey, how do we engage? We know that we have diversity in Plainfield. We have ISNA in Plainfield, right? And I walk through my neighborhood, and I have people from all walks of life, and some of them don't know. Some of them don't know me, and so it's my goal to get out and get to know them and talk to them and find out what is your culture? What is your understanding of us? And to make sure that we can live here together in harmony and have a great community. It's always been a good community. Like I said, I grew up here. I know that. I've known Philip forever. And so we work towards that of getting people in it. It's one of the greatest things that I think a person can say is, tell me your story. So a lot of people say that there's all, but really, if you can go up to somebody and say, just tell me your story. People want to talk, and we all have a story. And that's what the goal of all of this at the end of the day is that all of us up here are human beings. All of you are human beings. We all have stuff, right? We have past, we have different things that have impacted us along the way. And so we need to get to know each other personally. Unfortunately, what normally ends up happening is I'm the guy that shows up when it is not a good day. So I just pulled you over because you were speeding, because you were late to go do something, and now you're going to be even more late, and you might have a ticket and your insurance is going to go up, or you're just in an accident. Whatever the case, it's normally not you're calling me because you just finished some chocolate chip cookies and you think they're the best ever, and you know that my favorite cookie is a chocolate chip cookie and you want to share one, right?
But he will eat your cookies.
I will eat your chocolate chip cookies if you make them. So those interactions but that's the same on our side. So we are interacting with the public on their worst day over and over and over again. So you get that division sometimes of we're the bad guys, you're the bad guys. It's an interaction. And so the more we can humanize both sides, that's why we bring other officers here, and it's just not me, is that we can have great conversations and humanize it. We've started all kinds of different trainings in diversity and inclusion, and we've tried hiring. Hiring is our hard. We can't even get anyone to apply right now, right? More or less someone with diversity. And what I've talked about over and over again is that I guess it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing for communities, is that if I am a diverse applicant of any race, gender, whatever, and I am a qualified applicant to be a police officer, I'm now shopping for police departments. So it's no longer I'm, as a police chief, interviewing applicants. It's the applicant interviewing the police department, because they realize that, hey, we need more of them out there, and so they are shopping, right, for the best department. And if this guy was shopping 21 years ago, I would be shopping for the highest paid, lowest crime, best car, right? I'm looking for great amenities. We are seeing a shift, though, from officers from IMPD and NYPD and these larger agencies that are really struggling with a community unity, that are wanting to come out to here, right? They're not going to get shot at all the time. Their car doesn't have 250,000 miles on it. It actually will start, and you can take your days off and we will send you to training. And so they're like, hey, maybe it's okay to take a pay cut and come out to a better community. And so we're seeing a shift in that, but it's something that we're going to continue to stay focused on and engage with everybody that's out there.
And I would agree. Sheriff Clark and I have been part of the Alliance for Diversity conversation for some time as well, and unfortunately Sheriff Clark is out of state, so he couldn't be here tonight, so I'm here in his place. But for me and for us, it's about connection, about empathy. You know, we care about you as a human being, and that we want to have that mutual respect and that open communication and that conversation. And for us as a sheriff's department, it's a little bit harder for us to get a group together like tonight. You know, we have people from all over the county, again, 408 square miles, so we really appreciate the opportunity that Plainfield is providing for us to take part in some of these conversations, because some of you may not live in actual town limits of Plainfield. You may live on sheriff's department, in the sheriff's department's jurisdiction, and so it's nice for us, again, if you need law enforcement assistance, you're going to see either a brown or blue uniform. And so as we work together, it doesn't matter what color our uniform is, that we're all on the same team and that we're all doing the same work.
Let's do one more open forum question tonight.
Hello, my name is Rhonda Welp. I'm one of the owners of Two Chicks Whiskey Business Bakery right across the street from here. And so it's your lucky day. We make a great chocolate chip cookie. I'll make our shameless plug.
I've not had anything there that I haven't liked.
Well,
so.
Okay, great. We're on a good roll. But seriously, it was important for us to be here tonight. Really, we wanted to give you feedback, Chief McKee, for your entire department, because leadership starts at the top. And on January 30th, a gentleman entered our store, locked us in, and had really bad intentions. So that was our first interaction with Plainfield Police Department. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, amazing. Everyone from all the patrol officers to the detectives on the scene that day, just absolutely amazing. So kudos to you, because it starts at the top. And since then, we've had a few other minor things, but that particular day, just amazing response, and just follow up, and the list goes on. So I want to put that out there. Also, Detective Bugler showed up when we opened, just to, on his time off, which he didn't have to do, but it made us feel safe, and it let our customers feel safe, and it just shows a sense of unity. And so when you talk about, building better together, and you talk about meeting people where they are, just so you know, the feedback from us is that we saw that firsthand, and that's exactly what's happening. So thank you for that. So the other question is too, we've been down there in that spot for a little over 2 years, and we see a lot of activity. A lot of people don't know this about me, because mostly they just associate myself or Paige, my partner, mostly just with us baking cupcakes. I have 25 years actually as a probation officer in the state of Indiana, and I still work that job today. I'm only a part-time chick, but my full-time job is that, okay? And but I am still down there a lot, and I see a lot of activity, and we have a lot of customer base, and we're blessed to have that. When we do see things, it's one of those things where if you see it, you say it, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've made phone calls, and we've done these things, and so I guess my question is just kind of what direction, with all the new development coming, what's the direction of downtown? And because right now what we're seeing is a lot of kind of catch and release, The gentleman that entered our store that day, he was kind of an unchecked gentleman, I think he rented the place he rented. He was there 24 hours, and he had just gotten out of jail, and he entered our store, and this was his third aggravated assault charge. So we see a lot of catch and release. Not saying that's all police officers' fault, but I'm just saying that's kind of the reality of what's happening down there. We were also seeing a lot of heroin and drugs being dropped in our trash can right beside our benches, to the point where I had to have the town remove that trash can because there was just so much drug activity through there. So my question is, we love that place. We love that corner. We've put our heart and soul in it. We've put a lot of money in it because we believe in Plainfield, and we believe in revitalization of downtown. But we also need help. And so I guess my question is, what's the direction with that area, in particular that area? What do you see like moving forward of what we're going to do there?
Yeah, so I'm a data geek, and we just hired a data analyst, and that's really part of moving forward and focusing on the future, is that I just don't want to do things just because. We have to have some data behind it. And so my first thing to anybody, right, and specifically you, is that sometimes things are communicated in a way that don't always get to us, and when it does get to us, it's diluted, or it's well beyond where we're supposed to be. So the non-emergency number, I tell people all the time, right, nothing frustrates me more than when somebody comes to me and says, I saw somebody, I thought breaking in the neighbor's car, but it was 3 a.m. I hated to bother you. Please, that's why you pay us, right? You are not going to bother anybody. So even if you call us 367,000 times, you may think you're annoying us, right? And there may be an officer or two. I thank you for your kind words, but again, it's not all roses and sunshine, right? Every once in a while, an officer has a bad day, and we have a bad experience. But we're going to come out, and documentation helps us more than anything else, right? Because that's going to drive the data. Kyle Pruitt down there. That I have laid this square on his shoulders, right? He's over operations. Downtown is going to change. It already has changed. It's going to change dramatically more. We foresee that all the houses that people are buying up and changing, so we have to look at that now, and that's what I've kind of tasked him with, is we need a plan soon of what that's going to look like. So is that more foot patrol? Is that we just station somebody there? We have districts in the town, and so we have 4 beats, and that's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it kind of squares off, and he's done a lot of work in trying to figure that out. We are the busiest out east, as you can imagine, when you have thousands and thousands of people coming in, but we have to take a look at it because it's changed, and it's changed in a way that we've never experienced before. It's going out to other communities that have experienced the same kind of growth in the same way that we are, and what did they do, and what can we, I hate to reinvent the wheel if somebody else has a good plan with that. I'll let you chime in if you have any.
So directly related to that center of town area, we have directed the patrol officers, and specifically my conversations with folks like Zach, have been directed more toward, let's have a more active presence in those areas. And hopefully you're seeing some of that. However, that is also dictated by calls for service. So an officer may be pointed that way, and well, I'm going to cruise the alleys for a bit, and I know those apartments over there are super shady because I've been in them. And if we could get landlords maybe to do background checks and things like that, it'd be super. But that's something we can't force compliance with. We were just over there last night. My daughter was getting senior pictures taken in that area, and I'm walking around with my head on a swivel with the photographer like, why did you pick here? You know, there's some great old brick walls and things, I get that, but we've got those other places, right? And she's, oh, it's great, it's no problem, we're in Plainfield. No, okay, right? So we know, we do know, and we are trying to make an impact there. Where it becomes problematic for us is we have 10 officers per shift. They're taking the same number of calls they've always taken per officer, even though our shifts have grown. When I first got promoted to a lieutenant spot, it was me and 4 other officers, and that was my shift. So we've doubled the size of our shifts, but the run volume has also doubled. And then you trickle in the idea that more of our calls for service are requiring more of our people because of the severity of them. More people are being drawn to different places, so that in between times, in between calls for service, officers are trying to get into those areas and other areas. It's not just there that we've kind of identified as spots we need to keep an eye on. As far as the drug activity, you know, we're really trying to make an impact there too, but a lot of times our biggest impact is we catch an end user and who's supplying you, and then go from there on up the chain. Heroin users are different in a lot of ways, and they come in all walks of life. So it's also one of those things. We've had several officers get stuck by needles or in processing drugs be exposed to things and then have to go through the year of shots and testing for hepatitis and things of that nature too. So we don't want it, but we've got it. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to allocate the resources for it as the town continues to grow and change. I mean, the Barlow, we still don't know the impact that's going to have because they haven't been here long enough for us to have a good data set of how many calls for service is that generating, how many of their cars are getting broken into in that back parking lot that's hidden from Main Street that I argue with the developer about, let's not do it that way, right? So in some form and fashion, it's just a learning process, and we're going to do everything we can. I know every time I come and try to pull on your door, it's closed because y'all are only open like twice a week. But
they sell out.
So I promised my wife nice pastries or something, and then I come home empty-handed, and she's like, "For real?" You know,
So to piggyback on what DC said, I know exactly the buildings you're talking about. I was there when your store had the incident. I was one of the ones that were upstairs in the apartment where we got the search warrant for his room and everything. So there's some organizations in town that help people out that don't have clothes, don't have food, don't have shelter. In the process of that, there's some that slip through the cracks, and they also get help when they're released from jail or prison or whatnot. So some of the buildings you're talking about downtown, I know where they are. A couple of them, I think, or 1 or 2 is Family Promise. That's helping people out. There's some people in those buildings that Family of Promise are also helping out that we know that they're doing. A couple of those buildings, I just had talked to a gentleman the other day who came and said, listen, I call you guys all the time. I know they're smoking weed in that building. You're a police officer. They're smoking weed in their room. Do your job. If the planets align, that's great. If I had the opportunity to, I would, but you know, I have to put a key code in to get into that hallway, which may require a search warrant. I have to be there and smell the door at the time for them to hold the room to get a search warrant. So there's a process of doing those things. We just can't, and not that you're saying that, but people, you know, they just think that we can just kick the door in because we smell weed or something. It has to be done the correct way. So exactly what you said, if you see something, you have to call right then and there because it helps us. One of the gentlemen that called is one of the downstairs apartments, but he always wants to meet us 3 blocks away and say, hey, they're smoking weed in there now. Well, that's great. If you can smell weed from your apartment, then you need to bring me into your apartment so I can smell the weed through the vents and I can go through that way. So it's just being at the right place and at the right time. But I think some of these nonprofit organizations, they really mean well and they're helping a lot of people, but there's some people that they're helping as well that kind of slip through the cracks, and I think that's on the upper levels of some of those apartment buildings that you're talking about downtown.
I will say police presence, we mentioned that, and that is very, just that alone. I know you can't do it all the time, but when an officer's available and they're there, it's a very quiet activity. But when they're not there, and it depends on the times, it can be a lot of activity.
Yep.
We always call, we don't have, I called a couple weeks ago to the dispatch because there was a gentleman walking up and down the roads in the red with no shoes on. And I think that Dairyland was calling me, warning me, and I'm thinking if Dairyland's calling me, there's trouble. So I called the dispatch, and I think that finally at 4:30 or 4:15, he was out there at the dentist office, I think. But it went all day that he was,
Yeah.
the line called dispatch, I kind of felt like I was making someone come out, and I don't want that. I want, and as a matter of fact, also Small pulled up at the light and talked about body language. He saw that guy in our shop, and he looked at me through the window, and he goes like this or this, and I went behind the guy, because the guy came into the shop, and I went like that, and he was in there within seconds. So, but that day, you guys were present because he was everywhere, and it was very little activity.
Well, and that incident specifically, was that your shift? I think you guys interacted with that individual 5 times?
Correct.
Something like that, and that was a mental illness issue, and mental illness isn't criminal, so we can only do so much. And as a business owner, you can say, I don't want him here, and we could certainly get him out. Right, sure.
Everybody's in my shop, and then they come back. That's the thing that as a business owner we have to worry about, because we would love to do that when we have an issue, but the problem is we have to be around there all the time.
Mhm.
And so we worry about backlash. So if we do call when we need, you know, but I do think his presence is very key. Because I have noticed that when officers are down there, it tends to be more quiet.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a start, and I know that this is a more complex problem than can be solved even from the mayor for that, but that definitely is a start, and it is very helpful.
If you want to expand your business to a coffee shop, we will be there much more often. Just saying.
So I know we've all been sitting here for quite a while. I kind of want to transition into the second half of this. First of all, I want to thank Friends Church for having us tonight, and Pastor Kathy, wherever she's at. I appreciate her, you guys being here and allowing us to be here. I want to thank Charles for coming with First Movers. He's very instrumental in helping us engage with the community as well. So these guys are going to stick around as long as you need them to. Please engage them if you have any questions that you didn't really want to speak up tonight in a group setting, or if there's any questions that kind of sparked your interest after the other questions were asked. And we'll stay here as long as we need to. We do not want to take the coffee and donuts with us, so please take those with you. At least take them out the door with you when you leave. But we'll move on to that part of it. Thanks everyone for coming. Also, I just wanted to add that these are kind of building on one another. So we're trying to get all walks of life in Plainfield, right? So the next one that we have is going to be at ISNA, as he mentioned. We've encouraged people to come to each one of them, and I know Philip and Charles have come to both of them now, and if you would like to come to the other two as well we're having this year, please look for them on our social media.